Hey everybody, welcome to your readings for the week. These are the readings for the week ending May 27th, our last full week of May. We move into June, officially half the year over already. Pretty intense, huh? Anywho, speaking of intense, we do have some intensity going on for a lot of people actually this week. There's some pretty big challenges encompassing quite a few signs. One talent challenge in particular is all the planets around cusp, so it is encompassing 6 different signs at the same time, and it is a challenge we had last week and we will continue to have this week. And probably for the next couple of weeks, actually. Oh, I got my back to crack. That's awesome. Now I feel better. I've also got a fresh cup of coffee, which is absolutely necessary to do the reading. So let's go ahead and get started here. Where's my list? Here it is. We're going to get started with Darcy. Okay, so we've got a lot of stuff going on. We've got Jupiter just officially moving into Taurus. We've got Mercury, which is full out of retrograde. That includes the shadow period. So back to, whatever normal is. I think it's a setting on the dryer, but, it is what it is. Continuing to be in a T-square, both of these planets, at least Mercury does influence this at the beginning of the week, with Mars, which is also influenced with Venus towards the end of the week and the moon in the middle of the week. All those planets sort of moving in conjunction with each other around the same time, midweek. And then we round this challenge out with Pluto, which is in retrograde. So focus is on your long-term goals this week. And Jupiter is all about growth and expansion. Bigger, better, more. In some cases, it does represent greed. Really depends on, how you're looking at that, if that makes sense. Mercury starts off the week in conjunction with Jupiter, and Mercury is all about communication. So proper communication in terms of what you want is really important. To me, that's the difference between, say, when you go to talk to your boss and you say, if you don't mind or don't think it's a problem, I would kind of like a raise, if that's okay. As opposed to, I've been here for a year and I deserve a raise. You still may not get the raise either way, but the first way, you definitely will not get the raise, because obviously if you put that ball in somebody else's court, it gives them the option to say, yeah, well, we don't want it. And so therefore you don't get anything. I would assume that in the second you would get, you have more of a chance of getting it, I guess. You raise your chances. It's not a guarantee though. Mars continues to be focused on inner anger, getting rid of our inner anger. Awesome. The moon moves into conjunction with that about Tuesday, Wednesday, as does and Venus moves into conjunction with Mars and moves into this challenge right after the moon. So just as hot on the heels of the moon leaving the challenge, Venus sort of moves into that challenge. And Venus's influence continues to be on your support system. So I feel like Venus moving in this position is also going to make it seem like you're going through this challenge alone in many ways, or you're convincing yourself that you're going through this challenge alone. Pluto continues to be focused on your day-to-day schedule in retrograde. That does feel like you have absolutely no say in what's going on. It just is what it is, kind of a thing. Everything is changing, your schedule is changing. You have no power or control over that, which is really frustrating. All of this sort of builds into this I have these things. I'd love to do them. I just don't have the time. I don't have the money. I never have control over my schedule. Blah, 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 blah. It's all excuses for the excuse bag is what it is, basically. And I feel like this challenge is coming up to help you take a good hard look at that excuse bag and determine how much you want to continue to use said excuse bag, if that makes sense. And we have excuse bags for a lot of different things, actually. So, like I have my excuse bag for my own progression in my career. I have my excuse bag for making changes to better my lifestyle. I have my excuse bag for my diet. We have like a whole bunch of them, right? I'm not saying eliminate all of them, but it is a good idea to look at how much of that excuse bag you're using in terms of your personal goals. Because the truth is that if we don't look at the problem, we never find a solution for it, if that makes sense. Uranus continues to be in Taurus. We haven't really talked about Uranus a whole lot because there's so much other stuff going on in Taurus. Uranus is just kind of sitting over there doing his thing, hanging out, creating a sextile with Venus, actually, which is a little bit helpful because now we're talking about Venus becoming part of the challenge and feeling like you have nobody there to support you. But Uranus is like, hey, actually you do. You just need to look a little bit outside the box. But when you're focused on, I don't have a man to support me, or when you're focused on, my mother doesn't support me the way she should, well, you're not seeing all those other quote unquote very supportive people that are around you. And you being a Taurus, I know you're one of those Tauruses that literally knows everybody. So you actually have an immense support system. Yes, okay, maybe you can't 100% trust all of them. That's okay. Don't use those ones, obviously, but rely on other ones. So get a little bit creative when it comes to your support. And because Venus is focused on career, if your goals have anything to do with career advancement, you want your support to be within the career zone. Like you want to find the person that's going to support you and support your goals of advancement in that company, if that makes sense, or your goals of advancement in terms of going to school, what have you. So there is all that. Okay. And it is a lot. And it is probably, again, fixed signs, with these slow ass planets, things don't change very quickly. And so we're sort of back into this. Here we are again with a major challenge in the fixed signs kind of a thing. I'm not excited about it either, okay, because it does affect me. But I also look at challenges, as annoying as they are. I do look at them as being annoying because they are, but I also look at them for what they are, which is opportunities to grow. And when you look at them at opportunities to grow, they become productive. They become valuable. They even, in some cases, become fun. It's like a riddle that you can solve, and that when you solve the riddle, you get a prize at the end, kind of a thing. So that is that. The other thing that I'm actually being shown for you this week, and this is really bizarre, and I don't know what the hell it has to do with anything, but I'm seeing a very small pony. Okay? I can take that as being little girls always want a pony, right? Maybe what that means, or it has to do with achieving what that pony is for you now, if that makes sense. So when you're a little girl, it's somebody get me a pony, but as you become an adult, that pony turns into your dream car. That pony turns into your dream job or your dream house, your dream living situation, or what have you. So I feel if this is the case, that pony is getting much closer, if that makes sense. And that's what I have for you, Darcy. I'm going to go ahead and move on to Kendra, the adventures of Kendra. The Adventures of Kendra with a great big giant challenge caused partially by planets and Taurus yet again. Isn't that just lovely? We continue to have this T-square between Jupiter, Mars, and Pluto. Mercury is very much a part of that at the beginning of the week with his closeness to Jupiter, but by the end of the week, moves out of the challenge, still in Taurus, but out of the challenge. As far as Mars standpoint, still bringing up old anger, still triggering, still healing. You know the drill just as well as I do. It never ends, okay? And this is just adding fuel to that fire in ways that I personally have seen working for me. Not pleasant, not fun, not enjoying it, not liking it, not liking the recovery of it, but the after effects of it, definitely am enjoying that. I mean, it literally has made me feel in many cases like I'm lighter. I'm not carrying around so much baggage, and I don't feel like I'm dragging my ass everywhere that I'm going either. So that, I mean, there is value in that. With the moon moving into conjunction with Mars about Tuesday, Wednesday, and just as that ends, Venus starts to move into conjunction with Mars. So both the moon and Venus sort of play a part. So it's like we're going to start off with Mercury playing a part and then leaving, and then the moon coming in and playing a part and then leaving, and then Venus comes in to play her part and stays. And Venus brings this sort of support system issue into play here as well. And then, of course, Pluto, is still retrograde, is still 0 degrees Aquarius, which means it's right on the cusp of both Aquarius and Capricorn, and still focus on your day-to-day schedule, which basically means with a Pluto retrograde focus on your day-to-day schedule, it feels like you don't have any power over your schedule. Either there's a lot of changes, you're running into things like internet connectivity issues, even though the Mercury retrograde and the shadow period are over, you know, what have you. There's a lot of things that are coming into play that are causing these reschedules or these cancellations or these I just can't make the commitment to this right now kind of issues. With Jupiter focused on your long-term goals, and Taurus's focus really is like completely split between my long-term goals and my career goals, which is like Kendra's world right now. I am focused on this job, and I'm focused on what I'm trying to accomplish in terms of my own business. It literally is reflecting that for you right now. And things are a lot easier, oddly enough, with your career because Uranus is really focusing on that. And Uranus's sextile with Venus, which is also part of a challenge, by the way, but because the planets are so far spread apart in your sign, Uranus is coming in and sort of helping to fix that support system issue, right? By saying, yes, you have support in your career. And maybe you might have to get a little creative to see that support because it's not the support that you would normally get. It's from a completely different source, one that you did not even think would be supportive in some ways. And I don't see this playing out as you looking around for support. I see that support presenting itself in some way right when you need it, you know, kind of one of those magical moments, if that makes sense. The other side is your long-term goals, specifically your long-term career goals. You want to grow and you want to expand on that. And that is, of course, where the challenge is. So 2 things. One, Mars's placement, very, very important. You're going to have those doubts. You're going to have those fears. You're going to have those past reminders of things not working out the way that you wanted them to work out. And because those things are coming up, it's sort of going to put you in that scared, I shouldn't be doing this place, right? You know how to work around that, though. That's kind of your forte now as you're going through your healing process. So don't let it trip you up. Go through your process. Take the time to go run through the trigger, work through the trigger, and put it in its place. Release and let go. And of course, deal with the after effects of that, which are sometimes unpleasant. So we're looking at not having time to focus on your career right now, but you just moved. You're just adjusting to all of these new things. So you want to be very careful that you're not trying to pile so much on your plate that it's literally going to tip over and you're going to lose everything. Okay. That's kind of the visualization of what that looks like to me, if that makes sense. And the reality is that when everything falls off the plate, chances are it's going to fall on you, and it's exhausting. Okay. We're not trying to zap our exhaustion anymore. I kind of look at you moving from California, which is like go, 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 go all the time, to Tennessee. I think it's Tennessee that you're moving to, if I remember correctly. To Tennessee is I'm going to slow down and I'm going to enjoy life. That's what this move was all about, right? You don't want to start it by bringing in old bad habits, old bad California habits. So that's the first thing that I am being shown for you. The other thing that I'm being shown for you is I really think it's important, this week that you disconnect from all of your work responsibilities one day to focus on exploration, to focus on creating your space, to focus on exploring around you. These things it's really important for you to connect to your space and to connect to your family and to enjoy that together as a family unit in many ways. And I want to say that it's really important when you do plan that day, even though there's disruptions to your schedule in the stars, that you either put your phone on mute or establish, I'm taking this day off, create a voicemail that says, hey, I'm off today. I will get back to you tomorrow, what have you. You have to, that you lay down pretty strong boundaries on that, so that it doesn't feel like you're trying to do both at the same time. That's exhausting for everybody. The last thing is, I'm literally seeing you on a porch in a rocking chair with your cup of coffee or your tea or whatever it is that you enjoy drinking, just enjoying. It's really important. You're sitting there on the porch, you're outside in nature, there's green everywhere, you're watching your kids play, maybe you're watching your husband and your kids play. It's the moment. It is the moment. Don't let your brain go to, yes, I'm enjoying this moment now. I have to do this and this and this and this and this. Okay. Enjoy the moment as long as you possibly can. That's what I have for you. I am going to move on to Jeannette. Guess what? It is party time, because of course the sun has moved into Gemini. Actually, let's just kick off the week with the sun moving into Gemini. We're just going to party all week long. It's awesome. And not only is it awesome because it's there and ready to party, but the sun is actually like one of the few planets. No, I was about to lie to you, and I'm going to retract it before it even comes out of my mouth. So there you go. Actually, the sun is moving into a bit of a challenge, but only for one day, only the last day of the week. the moon moves into Virgo and moves into opposition with Saturn. And so consequently, we do have a square with Saturn throughout the week, and that just becomes a bigger challenge right at the end of the week. But we do have some good news too. We'll talk about that challenge here. The sun's focus is on career. Saturn's focus is on relationships. This creates a bit of a challenge when your career ideas don't necessarily line up with somebody else's ideas around you, if that makes sense. And of course, relationships are your partner, but are other people as well. Your children, your family, your friends, your grandma's dog's former roommate, whatever. It can be difficult. And when the moon moves into play in this and makes it a much bigger challenge, it also becomes emotional. Because the thing is that you have to make the best decision for you. Granted, you also have to make the best decision for you and your family. Does make sense. But only the family that's directly involved. So for instance, if you decide that you never want to make money again, that's going to directly affect your husband, obviously, because he lives with you, right? But your daughters, unless you are living off of them, really don't have a say in that, okay? Once it starts to impact them, then of course they do have a say. So I feel like in some cases, what's going to come out of this for you this week is that you may have some ideas of what you want to do, and that you just may not, your husband and you are not seeing eye to eye on that. And of course, in my view, the best thing to do is to come to a mutual understanding, a compromise, if you will, to make it easier and more comfortable for both of you. But as we get into the end of the week with the moon moving in and adding that very emotional element, and especially when the moon is focused on you, right? I also kind of take this in some ways as sometimes people make decisions based on their own fear. For example, you want to create your crafting business. Your husband is afraid that that's not going to make any money. So he doesn't want you to do it. But it's really important to you. I mean, it means everything to you. And so here you are going back and forth. Do I do this thing that's so important to me that I've wanted to do my whole life? Or do I do what he wants me to do to appease him? Again, compromise, right? How about we do the crafting part-time and I do something else part-time? That way there was a guaranteed income coming into the household. I'm taking care of my responsibility, but I am also doing what I love to do and what I've always wanted to do. Where relationships go wrong is that the two refuse to bend. And when the two refuse to bend, you're never going to find a solution, a resolution, what have you. There's nothing. There's just nothing, period. And that is really what you want to avoid there. So that's one thing that I have for you in terms of what's going on in astrology and such. The other thing that is coming up is I feel like, and I know, you know what, you did send me a message. We were talking about something over Messenger a few days ago, and you did send me a message that I haven't written about a neurology appointment. So let me, I haven't read it, okay? I just say I haven't read the message. And I'm sorry. I do ignore things sometimes for a reason. And that might be it. I'm not sure if the neurology appointment is coming up this week or next. I want to say there's something weird about that appointment or an appointment. It's like they keep rescheduling it or moving it, or they can't commit to it. There's something weird about it. Bottom line here, I think that the reason that this is coming up is I feel like it's important for you to I know you've also got some other plans. It may seem like this health thing, it might be affecting those other plans, your birthday plans and stuff like that. Like it's going to fall in the middle of that. Don't panic. Just see what you can do to talk to them and reschedule it. I don't think it's going to stop your plans, but it may look like it for a minute there. And you just, don't go into that panic space. Just find a solution that works for everybody as much as you possibly can. Last thing I'm being shown is I don't know why, but I see one of your dogs that keeps bringing sticks. And go outside, bring a stick. There's like a pile of sticks. I'm not sure if your dog is actually doing this. If she is, they're trying to tell you something. Usually I go with, like when animals kill another animal and they bring it to you, it's a gift, right? It's showing that they're providing in some way. And I want to say that this is part of that. But also, this dog in particular seems like really, really, really restless all the time. So I think it's important that the dog gets a lot of exercise and a lot of running around time specifically, because it's just, I feel all this pent up crazy energy going on with this animal. And it has everything to do with he just needs to run it off, if that makes sense. So that's what I have for you, Jeannette. Going to move on to Connie. I don't have great news, unfortunately. And it's news that I'm afraid is probably going to be around for a little bit. Because Mars is moving into Leo, and that's awesome. And no, it's not, because there's two other slow moving planets and two other fixed signs. It is going to create a challenge. If it makes you feel any better, it's my problem too. So we're in this together. So yes, we have Mars officially moving into Leo. Mars has been focused on inner trauma for months and months. Mars also has a lot to do with anger. So we're talking specifically about bringing up a lot of old anger recently, in opposition with Pluto, which is focused on your day-to-day schedule, and Pluto is retrograde, and Pluto's all about power and control, and this is about having no power and no control over your day-to-day schedule, which is frustrating. Both planets in a square with Jupiter, which makes this a T-square. Jupiter is focused on the growth and expansion of your long-term goals. With all that other bullshit going on, it doesn't seem like you can do that. And then to top everything off, we have Mercury in conjunction with Jupiter at the beginning of the week. So Mercury is also playing into this challenge a little bit. Then he moves out of that challenge Tuesday, Wednesday, the moon comes into your sign, moving into conjunction with Mars, creating an even more emotional problem. So Tuesday, Wednesday specifically are those days where the emotions might be high those days. We'll just put it that way. Or you may be experiencing a lot more triggers than normal, if that makes any sense. Not pleasant, not necessarily fun. Two things. One, in terms of your goals, one of the biggest issues that I see with almost everybody that I work with, myself included, okay, is that when a solution is provided, you come up with an excuse as to why it's not going to work, right? And I'm not just saying you purposely. You come up with a solution, and I come up with a reason why that's not going to work, right? It's the yeah, but syndrome. I hate those two words, yeah, but. And I use them all the time. They come flying out of my mouth willy-nilly whenever they want. Yeah, but means I don't want to change. I want the whole world to change around me to suit me, which is never going to happen. No matter how much you want it, never going to happen. Okay. You're setting yourself up for failure in that instance. So this comes up around those goals. Here's a good example. It's almost June. After this whole first week of the month, we are in June. I'm sorry, the whole last week of the month, we're in June next week, right? You're talking about coming to California for your birthday. That's the month after next month. It is coming, right? Have you made a plan? Have you made reservations? Have you bought plane tickets? Have you put any effort into that goal? If the answer is no, chances are what you're going to do, what we always do, right? Well, I just didn't have the time and I didn't have the money and then it just seemed like blah, 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 right? Goals only are successful if you put the time and the work into it. And your trip to California for your birthday is a goal. It's a small goal. We have to create all of these small goals in order to get into the finish line of the bigger goals. If you're not doing this, chances are you're stuck in the same place. And it's not pleasant and it's not fun. I'm stuck in the same place too. We got to unstuck ourselves, right? And fixed signs have a really hard time doing that. That's why this challenge prevents itself to force us to unstick ourselves, which is annoying. We don't like it. We fight against it. But if we're smart, we do what we're told. We also have Pallas Athene in Leo, which is the warrior goddess. I love Pallas Athene. She's like a fighter. She's like Xena, the warrior princess. She's like, I am going to take all of this like inner trauma shit and I'm going to whoop its ass. Okay. But we also have a heavy influence of the Lilith or dark moon. In the beginning of the week, it's like, hell yeah, change it all, right? I want to change all of this, just take it all out and start over. And then like halfway through the week goes retrograde and goes, you know what, never mind. I don't want to make any changes. Just leave it all in there. Don't clean the closet. Just leave it all in there. It'll be fine, right? That's like a contradiction in itself, right? Pallas Athene's like, clean this closet. The Lilith is like, no, just leave it all in there, right? This is the epitome of what we do, right? Is argue with ourselves. Want to change it, clean it up, get it out of there. No, just leave it alone. I don't want to move anything. Just leave it all in there. It's a good idea to be aware of where you're living that contradiction, because when you can identify that, you can fix it. You can eliminate it. You can put boundaries on it. You can let it run amok and completely destroy your life, you know, et cetera, et cetera. It gives you options. You have control over it at that point. And yes, there are days where I don't want to heal. I don't want to learn the lesson. I don't want to look at it in a positive way. And I know I'm getting in my own way. It's okay to have those days. It's not productive to live there. Last thing that I have for you, they're showing me paperwork. And I do believe that this is, well, I was just going to say, I do believe this is paperwork for a client, but it could be personal paperwork for you. Point is, double check that paperwork, make sure it's all filled out the way that it's supposed to, not just your portion of it, but someone else's as well. There may be a mistake that's not made by you, but you're the one that's going to have to deal with it. So it's really important to double check your paperwork, make sure all your I's are dotted and your T's are crossed. And that's what I have for you, Connie. Moving on to Jenny, fellow Leo lady. The shit is hitting the fan. That's all I got to say. The shit is hitting the fan with the introduction of Mars moving into Leo. Now, I'm sure we've talked a little bit about Mars here and there over the last few months because Mars has been stuck in this inner trauma space and releasing all this anger, this old pent up anger. It's been going on for months and months and months now. And now it's going on in Leo specifically as Mars moves into that Leo influence there. So also Mars continues to be in a T-square with Pluto, which is focused on your day-to-day schedule, which chances are is a little wonky this week. And then Jupiter, whose focus is all on your expansion and growth of your personal goals. So obviously, these two influences are hindering your growth in terms of your personal goals, which can be a bit of a challenge, honestly. A lot of what Mars's influence is influenced in old BS that's causing stinking thinking now. Stinking thinking is like, the number one thing that gets in the way of you achieving those goals, right? And to think you've achieved a lot in terms of career goals and stuff the last year or so, I mean, really, you've put a lot of work and a lot of time and effort into it. You have achieved a lot already. That does not mean, obviously, that you're going to stop. It's not what we're supposed to do, but this is not just about your career. This is about other goals as well. Travel goals, goals, in terms of your retirement goals. There's all kinds of things that goals represent, if that makes sense. So bottom line is that if we are allowing old pain to continue to trigger us, it's not helping us move forward. And that's really why this challenge is being created, to bring this to the surface in order for us to identify with it, to work with it, to kind of let it go and let it be what it is, right? And try not to control things that are out of your control. In fact, that's really coming up around this challenge for you specifically, is making sure that you let go of the control over things you have no control over, but control the things that you do, if that makes sense. Mercury plays into this at the beginning of the week, as it is pretty close, not quite in conjunction with Jupiter, but close enough. But what really kicks it into gear is the moon moving into your sign Tuesday and Wednesday and moving into conjunction with Mars. So now we're not just talking about releasing anger, but there's a lot of pain, a lot of emotion that's being released as well. And Venus, though not quite in Leo yet, she's coming, is moving closer to Mars. So she is not quite in a conjunction, but she's influencing this challenge throughout the rest of the week as well. And her focus really is on your support system. So her part of the challenge sort of makes you feel like you're going through a challenge and you have nobody to help you get through the challenge. In many ways, in my opinion, personal growth, emotional growth, it is a lonely business, okay? Because no one's really going to understand where you're coming from on your level. There are people that are trained to understand, or people that have gone through it before already, so they do understand. That's one thing. But I mean, it's like if you're looking for support over inner trauma from your children, if they didn't have that experience, they're not going to understand, and they won't be able to provide support. That can be easily taken as they're being unsupportive when they're not. They just don't know how to support you, if that makes sense. So part of this lesson is to make sure that you're not looking for support in a place where you know you can't be supported by this person, and setting yourself up for disappointment, if that makes sense. We do also have Pallas Athene and the dark moon also influencing your sign this week, and in a very interesting way, actually. Pallas Athene is a dwarf planet known as the warrior goddess. She is Xena, the warrior princess, basically kicking ass and taking names. And her influence on your inner trauma closet, she's in there just, then we'll get rid of this and we'll get rid of that. And just, I mean, literally, you know, like the quintessential, what it looks like when people are looking for something in the closet on every TV show ever or cartoon ever. And then you've got the dark moon, who at the beginning of the week is like, oh yeah, change. We're going for change. And then goes retrograde. And all of a sudden it's like, just kidding, let's leave it all right where it is, right? So it's almost, you know, that point where you do clean out your closet and you decide, I am getting rid of all of this stuff. All of these old clothes I said I would wear when I lost weight, all of these different things that I held on to, and I don't really understand why. And then you turn around and go, I can't. I just can't part with it. I'm going to put it back in the closet, right? This is the emotional closet, though. And really, you really want to think about why you need to hang on to this. How is it going to benefit you? That's what you need to look at, not why you want to hold on to it, because you can come up with any excuse in the world as to why you want to hold on to it. How is it going to benefit you? That is what you want to focus on. The more you focus on that, the easier it is to let go of things that are no longer serving you, if that makes sense. The other thing that I'm being shown for you this week, the color black is important. I know it's kind of weird, but I keep seeing that the color black is important. So black is a protective color. In fact, I went most of my life dressed in all black. Oddly enough, I'm dressed in all black right now, which is not odd for me. I went most of my life dressed in all black, not understanding. My perception was that I was hiding in the black. And then I learned that where a lot of people use white as protection, black is twice the protection. White is devoid of color. There is no color. Black is all colors in one. You're using all the colors at the same time. I feel that this is coming up for one of two reasons, or maybe even both. One, I do feel that there's a situation that may present itself this week where you do need to make sure you're protected, grounded and bubbled. You're not open to somebody else's negative energy, if that makes sense. But also aware of someone that is either new, that almost feels like they're sucking you dry in some way, or somebody that isn't new, that's never done that before, and all of a sudden is starting to, if that makes sense. It's like they cannot live without Jenny's input, Jenny's help, Jenny's something. Okay. Boundaries on somebody like that, definitely something that you want to do right off the bat. And in order to make sure that it's not, you're not accidentally falling into that pattern again, to make sure that you restructure your boundaries accordingly. The other thing that the black is bringing up to me is I feel like black is a void, as in there's like nothing there, right? And that to me represents a day where there is a void of things to do, or you are going to create a void of things to do, because I really feel that you need to do that. And I know that you're going to get to a point next week where you really feel that you need to do that. So if you do have a day where you don't have a whole lot planned, keep it that way. It's really important. So that's what I have for you, Jenny, and I'm going to go ahead and move on to Linda. So we have a pretty easy week up until the very end. But up until we get there, it's a pretty easy week. We do continue to have Ceres influencing your sign. If she doesn't go retrograde, she'll be leaving here in the next week or so. I'm not 100% sure on her retrograde pattern off the top of my head, so I couldn't tell you if she's coming back or not off the top of my head. Ceres focuses on the past. Ceres focuses on the past. In some ways, this is a good way to kind of sort of look back, take stock at self-care, how you're nurturing yourself, how you've nurtured yourself in the past. Did that work? How can you make improvements now around what happened in the past, if that makes sense? The neighbors are making like a ton of noise, and hopefully that does not infiltrate through the video. So, but if it does, that's basically what's going on there, unfortunately. So I think one of the things about Ceres influence for a while in terms of you are such a get her done, get her done, get her done kind of person. And while it's not that self-care is not something you're good at, it's not necessarily your top priority either. And I feel like Ceres influence really has sort of reminded you that it needs to be a priority, because if it's not a priority, the problem will just sneak up on you because you're not aware of it. Once we get to the end of the week, all of a sudden the moon comes into your sign right on Saturday, moves into a T-square with the sun and Saturn. The moon's focus is on self. So in terms of what that means for you, there is emotional stuff coming up, and specifically emotional stuff coming up around your career, because that's where the sun is focused, and your relationships, because that's where Saturn is focused. I actually kind of feel like you're being pulled in two different directions. What your family needs, what your career needs. That's always been a difficulty for you. It's not a difficult decision. It's a difficulty because you want to be able to give 100% to everything. And that is not possible for anyone, not even you. You can do it for a long period of time, but there's always those challenges that come up where you can't, and you have to choose one or the other. And I feel like in this instance, there may be an element of somebody coming in to make you feel bad about that. So it's not so much that, oh my God, something's going to come up with my husband and I'm going to have to make a choice. Do I take care of him or do I work? This is more of a, I wish you had more time for me kind of a situation. And maybe even their reaction sort of makes you emotional a little bit. It can also make you very defensive. Like, hey, I got to do what I got to do. And, I'm giving you as much as I can. You don't want to start an argument, obviously. That's not going to help anything. I would look at this more like a reminder. You get stuck on working, and it's really hard to pull out of it sometimes. And this is more of a reminder that you need a little bit more balance in your life. And it's not just about work, and it's not just about your husband or your family, but it is also about you. And making sure that you are taking care of your physical, mental, and emotional health as well. That's really important. The other thing that I feel coming up for you, first of all, I want to say the sun is shining, which makes you want to be outside, which makes you want to be out and about. And it's that buzz, being out there in the world with other people just creates that sort of, to me, it's the difference between being in Modesto and being in the Bay Area. It's like I'm buzzing underneath the surface, if that makes sense. It's really bizarre. And that buzz is something that is really driving you to be out. I mean, it's just, you love the buzz. It's almost like a drug, if that makes sense. And you know what? Go for it. Go for it. Enjoy that buzz. Enjoy the time working with other people. It's something that this, especially around something that really means a lot to you, if that makes sense. Your heart is being pulled in this direction for a reason. Last thing that I'm being shown is I see a black cat and I see a bat, both of which are associated with Halloween, which is nowhere near now. But I want to say actually that I feel like this Halloween mentality is around a person. This is a person that loves to decorate in Halloween decorations. This is a person that it's almost lives this sort of spooky, the veil is thin between the living and the dead kind of a mentality. And it's a mixture of sort of spiritual and witchcrafts in a way. There's a lot of good things about this person, but there's something about this person that kind of makes you go, And I feel like you got to take some of the things that they say with a grain of salt, but some of the things that they say make perfect sense, if that makes any sense at all. I'm not saying to be wary of this person. I'm not saying not to trust this person. I'm saying that whatever your gut says, don't argue with it. But it doesn't necessarily mean that it's bad or it's horrible or that you have to eliminate this person in some way. So that's what I have for you this week. Moving on to Matalyn, not a whole ton going on in Virgo this week until the end of the week. We do continue to have Ceres influencing Virgo and influencing your past. Ceres is all about nurturing. And I feel like in some cases that nurturing influence for you sort of doesn't just play out in terms of how you take care of or how you deal with others, but also how you take care of yourself in many ways. You actually have like, it's kind of funny because it's like I'm seeing it in the generational line from your grandmother to your mother to you, right? And in terms of self-care, I don't think you have a whole lot of really good examples of that in your family line, because like your mom and my generation, we're only learning that self-care is an actual thing here in the last couple of years, and that's not, doing what you want to do just because you want to do it. That's taking care of yourself physically, mentally, and emotionally, right? And with your grandmother's generation, women were taught to completely sacrifice themselves for everybody else. So I kind of feel like you have to look outside that family dynamic in order to look at what self-care really is. Now, a lot of Virgos do have this issue. There's a fine line between self-care and selfishness. Selfishness is doing things that in theory you think make you feel better, but actually they're sort of getting in the way of your responsibilities. Okay, so a good example of that would be you have responsibilities to do the dishes every week, but you're too busy getting high and you're like, oh, can't do the dishes, sorry, self-care. That's not self-care, okay? Self-care is making time outside of your responsibilities to maintain and take care of yourself. And it's really important to set these practices in motion as early as possible, because as you get older, it gets harder to stick to them. It really, really does. So you can say, I've got plenty of time, I can do that later. It gets a lot harder to put these practices in motion. Eating well is one of those things. The biggest part of self-care is your diet and exercise and maintaining your body's health. You are surrounded by people who have not done that. And you're surrounded by one who's doing a really good job of that. Your grandfather, for example. If only we could all be like him. I think he seems like he really enjoys that kind of self-care a lot. But it took a lot for him to get there. In any case, I feel the bottom line here really is looking back and just making sure that you are putting the proper practices in order. Of course, I'm not saying go on a diet. I'm not saying you need to go on a diet. I'm saying that for your health what you need to do to take care of you. You also know that when you come up with excuses, you know that you're coming up with excuses. It's okay to cheat every now and then. It's okay to take a day off. It's okay to, I'm scheduling 2 hours of I don't want to talk to anybody time. That all of that is absolutely 100% okay, as long as you're taking care of your responsibilities. Once we get to the end of the week, the moon moves into Virgo, and we'll continue to be in Virgo the following week, but the moon moves into this T-square with Saturn, all about responsibilities, and the sun, which is focused on your career. Now, the sun is where you shine. So in terms of shining in your career, I'm not sure if you are working right now or not. This could have a lot to do with a specific career idea or something that you want to do, if that makes sense. The challenge is that Saturn's position is in relationships. So somebody, not necessarily your boyfriend, could be your mom, could be your dad, could be anybody that you've formed a relationship with, may not like the idea that you have currently right now, but this means something to you. Now, the way that people normally deal with this situation is they dig their feet in and they argue about it. Then it's a big argument. There's never a solution. No compromise is taking place. You might even not do it because just out of spite, it's all their fault. Human beings do really stupid things. Okay. We are known for doing really stupid things. I think this challenge really for you is coming up because you need to trust in you, what you know, what you believe, what you feel, what your gut instincts are telling you. You can always make a compromise, but don't compromise yourself in the process, if that makes sense. Now, I do preach to you a lot about women's rights here because, up until 2 or 3 years before your mom and I were born, we did not have the right to our own health care, to our own decisions on our health care, to own the right to own property. We did not have any, very few rights just up until a few years before your mom and I were born. You are living in a time that your grandparents and your great-grandparents literally dreamed of. Okay. Literally, that's what they were working towards. They were working towards what you have now and what I have now and what your mom has now. But it is seriously ingrained in us still because it's been going on for so long that we should sacrifice what we want and what we need for other people. I'm telling you that if your gut says, this is important to me, not doing it because somebody else thinks it's a bad idea is only going to, how do I want to put this? It's like it sort of takes a little something out of you. And every time that happens, it takes a little bit more and it takes a little bit more and it takes a little bit more. And I just visualized a tear going down my face when I'm saying that, because that's the end result. You're just broken and missing parts at that point and wishing that you had done it differently when you were younger. Basically, what I'm trying to get to is don't compromise what you feel is right because somebody else doesn't agree with it. You can always, yes, take their opinion into consideration. Don't base your whole decision on their opinion. The other thing that I am picking up for you is, this is so weird what I'm seeing here, but there's a cartoon, there's a Sylvester cartoon. Sylvester's trying to get a mouse, but there's a baby kangaroo that has escaped the zoo, and so he's looking at the kangaroo thinking it's the mouse, and the mouse is kicking his ass, right? I literally just saw the whole cartoon in my head. That was pretty entertaining. I feel like there's a situation maybe coming up where it feels like it should be pretty easy to tackle that little mouse, but all of a sudden the mouse is like bigger than you and it's almost impossible to tackle it. You don't want to tackle the whole thing at once. Tackle it little bit at a time. Eventually you will get it. Okay. But don't let the size of this challenge deter you from what you know you can do to fix it, if that makes sense. And that's what I have for you, darling. Moving on to Theresa, nothing going on in Libra in terms of planetary activity, there's nothing going on in Libra this week. That will happen next week. Enjoy it while you have it this week. Focus continues to be on how you think, the mind specifically, and how the mind works. There's a couple of things that come up for you around that. Libras are brilliant. Yes, ruled by Venus, they are emotional to a certain extent, especially female Libras. But Libras are brilliant. And I am just being told to tell you, do not water down your brilliance for anybody. I feel like this isn't the first time this has come up for you, or this isn't the first time that this has been a thing for you. Part of it is, like the old adage of we women have to be subservient in some way, and therefore we can't be smarter, I guess, than our man. I don't necessarily think that it's, this is between you and your man, although it could be, but I just feel that there's a situation coming up where you shouldn't hide your brilliance just to help someone else's shine, if that makes sense. There's always a time and a place for that. I don't think that's this week. We'll just put it that way. I really see that this is important, specifically around, things like car issues or something that is not normally your forte. I would look at it. So here's a good example. Okay. We had an issue with one of our vehicles a long time ago, and my husband pretty much knew what it was, but he didn't want to believe that that's what it was because it was a lot of work to have to fix it. So he started going and fixing all this other crap and wasting money fixing all this other crap that didn't fix the problem, right? I know nothing about any of this stuff, but his uncle came to me, who was a mechanic, and his uncle showed me two things. And those two things I described to him and said, well, he's showing me these two parts, and one of those things was a green ball, which made no sense to me at all. I mean, what the hell is a green ball doing in any of that stuff, right? Well, as it turns out, my husband was like, holy crap, because he knew that his uncle was speaking through me and telling him what he already knew, which was the fuel pump was broken and had a full tank of gas, and you gotta drop that whole gas tank. It's a big old pain in the butt, right? So, and the green ball is in the gas tank, the little floater ball that measures how much gas you have, and then it sends it to the little odometer thingy, or not the odometer, but on your thing, tells you how much gas you have, right? It was literally legit a little green ball that was in there. So maybe that's not my brilliance. Okay, maybe that's the brilliance of my abilities, right? But he didn't want to listen to that because he didn't want to believe that that's what it was. And when he started to really sit down and think about it, he realized that what I was saying was, I was pointing to the gas tank, which is the fuel pump, which is what he knew what it was going to be anyway. So long story short, just because somebody else has knowledge of it and you see a problem doesn't mean that you shouldn't point it out. It could be the difference between disaster and avoiding disaster, even though you don't want to stick your nose in it, if that makes sense. The other thing that I feel is coming up around you, I really see like this flowery, flowy, I want to say it's like springtime. There's something new coming up around you this week. And that's what springtime is to me. It's like a brand new experience. I'm not sure what it is, but it really sounds fantastic. It really sounds like a lot of fun. It might even be something that you're like, I don't know, I'm kind of on the fence about trying this. Oh my gosh, you're not going to be on the fence when you start. You're going to literally fall in love. So in any case, that is what I have for you. I'm going to move on to Regina. Nothing going on in Scorpio this week, which is really good. In terms of planet activities, probably going to be a little different next week. In fact, there's a pretty big challenge going on that unfortunately, when the moon moves into Scorpio next week, is going to make that a much bigger challenge for a couple of days. So let's just not worry about that until that happens next week. Okay. And let everybody else who's dealing with a challenge deal with it on their own without your assistance. Okay. Focus continues to be on the home. And there's a couple of things actually that seem to be prominent in that. First of all, repairs. There's something that needs to be repaired. Either the repair has been put off or something like that. I almost want to say you want to avoid a bigger repair, but I think we're getting pretty close to you're going to need to repair it or you won't be able to avoid a bigger repair. I'm not sure what that's around. I want to say an appliance. That's the word that comes to me. Either it needs to be fixed or it needs to be replaced, if that makes sense. Like we're coming to the end here of waiting on that decision, I guess, for lack of a better way of saying that. This could have something to do with electricity also. I'm not sure if that's the electricity of the house or if it's an electricity issue with an appliance. So we'll just leave that as a clue that might help you understand that. I'm not saying you need to fix it personally yourself, but putting off getting it fixed, I feel like you're not going to be able to do that for very much longer. The other thing that I feel is coming up for you right now is specifically the word grounded is coming up around that. Funny, we just said something about electricity, so that could be an issue. But also, I'm talking about you being grounded specifically. I feel like lately you've been sort of all over the place, if that makes sense. And I feel like part of that all over the place is just picking up on so many different energies all the time. If you're not grounded and bubbled at work, it's just really going to drain the you know what out of you. So I think that your guides are sort of coming through to remind you of that, a gentle little reminder, for lack of a better way of saying that. The last thing is There's a man coming through in spirit, and this is an older man. And he keeps saying, don't forget about the promise that you made. And I don't know what that promise is. Okay. You obviously would have a better recollection of that. I don't think this is a promise you made to him either. I think this is a promise that you made to yourself. And he's just reminding you of that promise, lest you forget. I feel like the reason that this is coming up is because something, it's to me, I get the feeling of, I promised myself I would never be in this situation again, and then boom, you found yourself in that situation. There are some cases where it's impossible to avoid that situation again. There are some cases where you know where you could have avoided being in that situation, right? Or breaking that promise to yourself, if that makes sense. So if you don't know what that is, maybe do some meditation on it and see if usually it's your first thought that will tell you what that is, if that makes sense. So that's what I have for you, Regina. Moving on to Theresa Sheppard. No planets in Scorpio this week. Focus is on the home. I kind of feel like actually focus is on, I wish I could be home or I had more time to be home, because I don't really see that as being a thing for you this week. I also feel like it's kind of funny. A lot of people get into these issues where, it's like we're never happy. I wish I was at home and not traveling around working, because it's exhausting. And then when you get home, it's like, I don't want to be here, I want to be traveling around, right? I feel like the reason that is coming up is it just might be a reminder to remember to just enjoy where you are in the moment, as much as you possibly can. I actually see some really fun stuff coming up for you to enjoy in the moment this week. So you definitely want your focus to be on that. Don't see any major delays. Don't see anything really major coming up for you this week. That's the first yawn of the readings also. I do see a lot of busyness, or you being very busy. Maybe even the term overbooked is coming up, which is stressful, but can be fixed. Even if it looks impossible, it can be fixed. I also feel that it's important to have as many boundaries over your schedule as you can. So when you have breaks or time off, that somebody isn't putting something into that time, if that makes sense. You have to balance your self-care in there also, and your unplugging time as well. There's somebody in particular that keeps sort of popping up around you. It is a man. I don't think it's a man you're related to. It's like he's very difficult, almost just impossible to work with. And I feel like we're looking at partly trying to cope with how to work with this man, but I think that boundaries are really important also. He needs to know just how far you're willing to be pushed before you decide to let that stinger out, if that makes sense. And while letting the stinger out is probably not a professional thing to do, especially if this has anything to do with work, there are ways of letting that stinger out that do fall into being professional at the same time, I guess, if that makes sense. So yeah, some really hard bound. It's like this man keeps wanting you to do things that are just impossible, that you just can't do. And no, 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 no. You've been diplomatic. You've been nice. You need to get tough. There's no way around that. That's what I have for you. Moving on to Jillian. No planets in Scorpio this week. That is going to change next week. So that's next week. We're not going to talk about that this week because it's this week. Focus is on the home. Continues to be on the home to a certain extent. There's a couple of things that I feel are coming up for you this week. The first one is I do see a little dog, and I'm not sure if this is one of the dogs that you have already, or if this is a dog that belongs to somebody else. There's an issue with the dog. Either the dog is sick or just not feeling good, or something is up with this dog. He's such a wonderful little caretaker. I mean, when you set out to take care of someone or something, you put everything into it, absolutely everything into it. You are so good at it. People or animals. I mean, you are so good at it. There's people that get into businesses of like nursing and taking care of people, and they have zero bedside manner. They treat you like you're a machine. You don't do that. You don't do that. And I don't think you ever would do that. I think that the empath and compassionate part of you won't allow you to do that, if that makes sense. You're just so good at it. That's what your dad says too, by the way. I don't know if you ever discussed what you wanted to do with your future with your father or not, but it's like he keeps sort of reiterating that caretaker, nursing, veterinary clinic, in some way caretaking. There's even kennels that you can work for where you take care of people's animals, while they're away, things like that. I'm bringing up work because I feel like it really is a very strong influence right now over your life, and it's like that's what everybody's talking about. I've noticed you and Daniel, well, and your sister are in a different generation than, say, Michael and Jonathan, right? And so I've noticed with a lot of kids in your guys' generation just don't really want to, it's almost like with Daniel, it's like if I don't find the absolute perfect job for me, I don't want a job, and that's not how we grew up. We grew up with, if you want to eat, you need a job. Kind of a thing, which is very difficult for us and you guys to see eye to eye. And then you have your grandparents' generation, which is a whole different generation. It was different for them too. So I see a lot of this sort of differences of opinion around that a lot. And the thing is that the more you dig your heels in because you're being told what to do, the more you're hurting yourself, right? I feel like in your heart, you know what you want to do. You just need to bite the bullet and get it done. And so I feel like this is why this keeps coming up over and over again, is because that just needs to happen. Not that you haven't started it, because I have seen that you started it, just to keep going with it. And it's hard. It is hard, but everything is hard. Everything is hard, and you can't avoid it. In a way, you've learned that lesson already with your dad. You can't avoid it, no matter how hard it is. It's part of the lesson that we're here to learn in many ways. That's one thing. The other thing that I'm being shown for you is the term the girls keeps popping up. I'm not sure if this is a couple of girlfriends that you have where it's like time with the girls or girls' night. Some about girls keeps popping up. You girls in some way, maybe this has to do with you and your sister. I'm hoping, fingers crossed, that it has something to do with you and your sister kind of working through the things that you've, been going through lately. If it isn't, that's okay. I'm not trying to force you to do anything. I wouldn't do that. But I will hope for it. Okay. I will continue to hope for it. I'm not forcing you though. But something about you girls. So I'm just gonna leave that with you, okay, and let you figure that one out. How about that? That's what I have for you, darling. Moving on to Sheri, no planets in Sagittarius this week. That will change next week. We'll leave next week with next week. Focus is on those you love this week. There's a couple of things that sort of come up around that. One, I don't think your house is going to calm down again next week either, in terms of having, people in and out, staying, different family members, all the stuff that's been going on. I don't really see that changing. There's still a lot of up and down, if that makes sense, in terms of, things are good, then there's a concern, then things are good, then there's a concern. Good days, not so good days, kind of a thing. That's still very much there, very much prevalent. I don't see quite so much of you running here, there, and everywhere, like all this back and forth stuff. I don't really see as much of that going on this week. So I think that sort of calmed down, but the in and out, thing. And it's not a bad thing to have people around. I mean, it's not that you're like, oh my God, I can't wait till all those people just F off for good. I'm not saying that. That's not how you are, but it does add another layer of responsibility that can be exhausting after a while. So, but you've gotten a pretty good sort of schedule down to work around that, to sort of, take your time when you have it, kind of a thing, to make it so that, you don't get quite as overwhelmed as, say, you could be, if that makes sense. The other thing that I'm picking up on for you is, I think it's very important I think it's very important that you listen rather than advise in a specific situation. I'm not sure if this is around your husband or your daughter, okay, or somebody else even. But I feel like when it comes, you'll know. It's very important to listen rather than advise. And when I say listen, it's to listen to understand where they're coming from, not to respond to what they're saying. You'll know why when you get there, if that makes sense. I want to show this to you. My grandma found this, and I went over there yesterday, and I just figured it's sitting here, so I'm going to put it up here. And it's like the craziest picture. I mean, that's Jonathan's forehead down there, right? Mikey with this Darth Vader helmet. Dave's grandfather's back there. I don't remember them ever going to that house, but look at little Matthew. Look how young he is. He's so handsome. Look at that. Anyways, I just wanted to show that to you. That's all I really got for you. It seems like a pretty quiet, pretty routine, not a whole lot going on, either way. nothing really overly exciting, good, bad, or indifferent, unless I'm not being shown, which is highly possible, but I don't see any of that happening. So that's what I have for you. And moving on to Peg, no planets in Sagittarius this week. Focus is on those that you love this week. We do have the moon coming into Sagittarius next week. We'll worry about that next week. Couple of things that I am seeing for you. The first thing that I'm being shown is I keep feeling like somebody is bugging you. It's like either someone keeps trying, you've sort of cut the ties with a person and they keep trying to suck you back in or something, or somebody wants you to do something and you're just not interested and they won't leave you alone about it. If that makes sense. It kind of feels like, when you owe somebody money and they're calling you like 5-6 times a day, hey, you owe us money, kind of a thing. That's how it feels. And you've tried really hard to take care of this in a diplomatic way, say, no, thank you, I'm not really interested. That sounds really fun, but no, I think you just have to put your bitch badge on, because this isn't somebody that's like in your family. This is somebody that I think you feel, and I definitely feel, is trying to use what you do for their benefit. Kind of like another place that we remember, if that makes sense. It's not really symbiotic. It's more for them, and they're trying to sell it as it's good for you, but I think you can see right through that bullshit. So yeah, I feel like most of the time you don't like to play that card. You don't like to be the mean person or let the mean Sagittarius come out every once in a while, but sometimes you have to. And I sort of feel like this is coming with this situation, if that makes sense. Like they will not let it go. And I think a lot of times with individuals like this, they don't let it go because they feel like, the term don't mistake my kindness for weakness. And that's what they're doing. They're mistaking your professionalism and your ethics, your integrity for weakness, making them think that you are easy to talk to talk into things and push around. And they need to know that that's not true, obviously. They can find somebody else to siphon off of. It's not you. And there's a lot of narcissism around this too, or narcissistic tendencies, I should say. The way that they communicate, in ways that sort of, are a nice way of threatening or what have you. You're not going to be able to do this on your own. You need our help, kind of a thing. You yes, it screws with your brain, but at the same time, you're not going to buy into that kind of BS anyways. That's one thing. The other thing that I'm picking up for you this week is there's a day this week. It's literally like I'm seeing you taking the time to sort of drag yourself around, getting yourself ready, getting dressed, doing all this stuff, then opening the door, taking 2 steps out and going, no, and turning around and going back inside and putting your PJs on. I feel like this is one of those. I have these days where my energy is just so low. It literally feels like I'm dragging, 200 pounds of my ass behind me, which of course is not happening, but that's what it feels like. And I feel like those days, if I can get away with it, I will reschedule the whole day just to give myself that space. But just because some days we need that, if we've been doing, our bodies tell us when we've done enough and we need to rest. So it's like a personal day, right? don't feel guilty about having to reschedule something and taking a personal day. I think it's really important. The other thing, the last thing that I'm being shown is a rainbow. And I see this rainbow coming up over a situation that has been a challenge lately. And the rainbow means that this situation that has been a challenge lately is looking like it won't be so much of a challenge anymore. So either you've been dealing with a situation that all of a sudden, rights itself, maybe the Mercury retrograde being over has something to do with that. Things are moving again in this situation, or doors have opened up that were closed at one time, if that makes sense. So that's what I have for you, Peg. Moving on to Mama Sheri. No planets in Sagittarius. Focus is on those you love this week. Couple of things come out of that. I do believe for you. First and foremost is I kind of get this feeling that you've been struggling back and forth lately about wanting to be closer to some of those people that you love. Unfortunately, they're all spread out all over the place. But it's not that you're unhappy where you are. You feel the pull, if that makes sense, which is okay. And it's just, you've done the phone and the video and all that. It's just not the thing. Two things that you could do: plan a trip to visit, to help out. But I don't, or set plans in motion to rectify that, as in set up a goal for that, if you can do that. I want to say that in terms of living on your own and being able to afford to do that, that is not your only option. And you know that that is not your only option. Not that I'm saying you need to move. I'm just saying that it feels more like I'm pulled, like I feel you're pulled to go to Arizona. You're pulled to be closer to your daughter and your grandchildren. And that makes perfect sense. I'm also being shown your mom keeps saying every cloud has a silver lining. I'm not sure if that means that the cloud is going to present itself this week, or if the cloud has already presented itself, but it's presenting at silver lining this week. It could go either way. I think it's a reminder that results come from how you look at things in many ways, and your manifestation of it. So if you approach a problem in a negative way, you're not going to find a resolution. If you approach it in a positive, open-minded way, a resolution is easier presented, if that makes sense. Last thing that I am shown for you is a dragon slash seahorse, little red one. First it's a dragon, then it's a seahorse, then it's a dragon, then it's a seahorse. Actually, a seahorse kind of looks like a dragon in some ways. I don't know what the seahorse has anything to do with anybody. It's red, and it's a little seahorse that looks like a dragon. I, of course, associate my dad with dragons. Look up the meaning of the seahorse, spiritual meaning of a seahorse. I think there's something in there for you, if that makes sense. And look up the color red, because that red is important. And that's what I have for you. And finally, Alyssa, We got actually some pretty interesting stuff going on in Pisces, and two completely different focuses as well, which may make sense why you have so much stuff going on right now. Let's start with Saturn's influence, which is influencing your relationships right now. Saturn is all about responsibility. Saturn is all about your responsibility versus other people's responsibilities. Your responsibility to your relationships, not what your relationships deem is your responsibility, what your responsibility is to your relationships. That makes sense. Saturn is in a square with the sun pretty much all week long. The sun's focus is on career. So in some cases, this presents a bit of a challenge when you have ideas of what you want to do with your career, and somebody around you who loves you has a different opinion about what you should be doing with a career. Now, our parents do this a lot. And as a parent, I do this a lot to my children because we worry about our kids, right? So we've kind of been there before, and we've had these different experiences, and we don't want to see our children going through those hardships. In fact, we would like to help them avoid that. Well, it's a losing battle because we all have to go, no, I know what I'm talking about, and go and actually live it in order to learn the lesson, which is probably annoying for our parents, but we didn't listen to our parents either. So, if that makes you feel any better, I'm sure your mom didn't listen to her mom, and yada yada yada, right? It's kind of the way of life. I feel like you have to make the best decision for you, but take what they say into consideration and use it, right? Use it for your benefit. The moon moving into opposition with Saturn makes this a much bigger challenge when it becomes emotional for you. And if it's something that you're really pulled to do, like this is what I meant to do, it will become deeply emotional for you. And the advice is not just do or don't. The advice could be, let's find an easier way to do this. Let's find a more productive, more successful way to do this. So it could be somebody offering to help you, and you don't want, to allow your preconceived notions of what they're going to say get in the way of that, because their help could be very valuable to you. Neptune is focused on money. No challenges. We don't need no stinking challenges, right? Neptune is focused on money in a grand sextile for most of the week with the sun and Pluto. Again, the sun's focus is on career. So whereas the sun's presenting the challenge, but the sun is presenting a helpful aspect as well, which means it could go either way, right? Neptune's focus is on money. This is actually a really good time to be making plans financially in terms of growing your income or making more money or setting your goals in place to make more money. I feel like you have some ideas. I feel like you have some irons in the fire. It's important to continue to nurture those irons in the fire to see which one of them becomes most lucrative, if that makes sense. Or there's also a possibility of maybe taking on another avenue of money flow, or quite possibly, like another client or something like that. So there's a lot of possibilities right now. In fact, it could be a little bit overwhelming. The amount of possibilities, it could be a bit overwhelming. Take them out of here, write them all down, use your intuition to pull you towards focusing on the one that means the most to you right now. And if that doesn't work out, then move on to the next one on the list. That way you can organize all those irons in the fire and they don't all just melt in there because you're not paying attention, if that makes sense. The other thing that's coming up around you is butterflies, lots and lots of butterflies. And I feel like the butterflies are nerves. The butterflies in your stomach. There's something that I feel is coming up this week that's making you nervous. Mainly because it's kind of exciting, actually. You also get butterflies in your stomach when you fall in love. I'm just saying, I don't know if that's really it, but I'm just saying you do also get butterflies in your stomach when you're falling in love, but you get butterflies in your stomach when you're nervous as well. And so this is not I'm nervous or scared over something bad. This is I'm super excited about, I don't know what it is, but I can feel the butterflies in your stomach. And it's a really exciting opportunity. It's a little bit scary, but it's a really exciting opportunity. And definitely see good things around it. We'll just put it that way. But that's what I have for you, darling. And that is what I have for everybody. Thanks for coming and hanging out with your readings. I hope you guys are loving them. If there's any way that I can improve on them, don't hesitate to put in the comments or reach out to me, email me, message me, whatever, and let me know that, hey, I'd love to see this in my readings every week. I am more than happy to accommodate that if I can. So thanks again for watching. I'm Melissa Bruce, the Heavy Metal Psychic. Kick ass and have a great week, everybody.